So far, all the PSICAT tutorials have used the CSD facility default diagram and columns. But what if the defaults aren't suitable for your project? Maybe you don't need a units column, or you want to reorder the columns or change their widths. PSICAT can do all of those things using the View Diagram Options dialog. With an open project and diagram, open that dialog now. On the left is a list of all the columns included in the diagram. For each column item, the topmost item is the title you see atop the column in the diagram, then the column's width measured in pixels, then the PSICAT internal column type. The topmost column on the list is on the far left of the diagram. You can see images is at the far left here. The item at the bottom is on the far right. Description is at the bottom and on the right. Suppose you want to move the images column to the middle of the diagram. Click to select that column item. Then click the Move Down button, and the active diagram will update to reflect this change. Click OK to confirm this change. So now everything works exactly the same way, it's just that the images column is now in the middle of our diagram. It is important to understand that any changes you make here will apply to all section diagrams in the entire project. You cannot modify diagram options on a per section basis. This will apply to everything. So if we open this section, for example, you can see that here too, images has moved to the center of the diagram. The arrangement is the same. So any changes you make will apply to everything in the project. With that in mind, let's continue exploring diagram options. You can modify a column's width by selecting it and clicking the Edit Column Width button. A column's width is measured in pixels. I can make the ruler column narrower if I change it to 50, for example, currently 72. I can make it wider, change to 100. If I leave it blank, it will return to its default width of 72. The only column whose width can't be changed is images. PSICAT adjusts the image column width as needed to avoid stretching or squeezing the core image. Now look at the bottom of the list. Note that the description column has a width of star. The star means use the available space left by other columns. So if we close this dialog and if we adjust the width of our PSICAT window, you can see that the description column is growing here, whereas all the other columns are remaining the same size. So that's what the star means. Description is going to take all of that available horizontal space. If multiple columns have a width of star, they will equally divide the available space. So for example, let's make the features column width also a star. And now, as we expand the window, you can see now they split the available space in half. If the PSICAT window is too narrow to fit the requested widths, it will try to adjust the column sizes in proportion to each other. At some point, of course, things will get very squished. So in general, it's better to have more width available than less. The diagram options dialog can also be used to add and remove columns. For example, we could remove the lithology column if we don't want it. It's gone. We can bring it back. Choosing Add Column, finding the CSD facility lithology column, and when we add it, it will be added at the bottom of the list, so it'll end up on the right side of the diagram. To move it back to its rightful place, use the Move Up button. And as long as we're here, I will also move images back to the far left of the diagram. Notice that when I removed the lithology column and restored it, the data remained. We didn't lose any of the lithology data that we had previously created. Removing columns will never destroy the data they contain. It just shows or hides that column. In addition to a width and position, each column has a unique set of editable options. Let's take a look. Open the Diagram Options dialog. Select the Images column and click Column Options to view its options. You can change the header text to be pictures. And when we click OK, you'll see that it has changed the image column header. All columns have a header and a footer option except for the ruler, which will always display the project's units. And footers typically only appear in diagrams when you choose to add a footer. Change this back to the default for now. Next, let's look at the ruler column and its options. We can change the frequency of labeled hashes and unlabeled hashes, so I could make labeled hashes less frequent by changing 20 to 40 here. You can see we have far fewer labels. I could reduce the number of hash marks themselves, going from 5 to 10. You can only draw hashes on the right, or only on the left, or not at all. Change this back to the default. So there are the options there. In the lithology column, there are a variety of options. Could choose to, you can see there's outlines around each interval right now. If we disable that, those will go away. Grain size options will be discussed in a different tutorial. You can change the scaling of textures, so larger numbers will show more of that texture. If I change it to 2, you can see we now see a sort of a more dense texture in the available space. Change that back to 1. I will show one grain size related option right now. If you do not like the behavior that causes lithology widths to vary by the grain size that's in the same interval, you can uncheck this option, and then lithologies will always draw at full width independent of the grain size in their interval. The grain size column is going to be fairly similar options. Again, you have the choice to outline images and change texture scaling. So I'll hide the intervals, or sorry, outlines rather, and increase the density of the textures. In the bedding column, again, we have the option to outline intervals or not. That only behaves properly when you choose to tile symbols. So some options are dependent on the status of other options, and usually that's noted in the help text down here. As you can see, it says applies only when tile symbols is enabled. So we'll go back to the default here. You can choose to tile symbols instead of drawing a single icon. And that can be useful in cases where, as you see here, let's just disable tiling again. As you see here, we have a long bedding interval where the icon, because it is centered in the total range of that bedding, is completely off screen. So you don't really know what this is in the current settings. But if you change to tile, you'll be able to see clearly that it is the massive icon there. So that can be helpful when editing. We'll go back to untiled here. You can also change the size of the displayed icon when tile symbols is disabled. So I could make my symbols larger. For example, I could make them smaller. Oops. There we go. But that only applies when tile symbols is disabled in the bedding column. So we'll leave those as is for now. The features column similarly has a tile symbols option, just like bedding. So if I choose that, then my features will be tiled. Just repeat the existing icon instead of drawing it just once in the center. And here too I can change symbol size, and that will apply regardless of whether you are tiling or not. In this case, feature column is slightly different in that way. And this is often useful if you have many overlapping features and want to accommodate more features in the visible area of the features column. This is one way to do it. Of course, the other way to do it would be to make the features column wider, but often this is a better solution for that. to 32 for now. In the description column, you can change font size. Go back to the default here. And so that's an overview of column options. There are things we didn't look at here. Again, don't be afraid to experiment. You can always change things back.